With this series, I'll be focusing on how I create future garage music, and do note that there are no set rules on how you can create such genres. Just go with what your heart tells you and focus on what experimentations and new ideas you can bring on the table. Every musician is different and has their own unique way on how they create music, and that is what sets them apart. So take everything that I teach as a reference guide for the basic layout for such genres, and then build on that with experimenting as much as you can. As to why this genre is so elusive and not so popular in India and most parts of the world is a discussion for a separate video altogether. But in a nutshell, this genre is mostly down-tempo, soothing, relaxing, dreamy, and sometimes melancholic, and are not usual party bangers. These are mostly categorized as music for study, work, and focus-related activities, and sometimes as relaxing meditative listening sessions, and that is what sets them apart. With this channel, I'm focused at bringing this genre to you, and in the process, give my 2 cents on it. So enough said, let's jump in and start making music. Alright peeps, so here we are in Logic, and as you can see, I've shrunk quite a bit to the corner there, and it's just because that I want you to see what's going on the screen. So let's start off with how I go about creating future garage music. Is that I start off with a simple piano, and I like to lay down the chords first, the chord progression, and the overall theme and the mood that I want to set with the song. Right off the bat, I want you to notice that there are only 25 tracks in this project, and that is the point that I want to drive to you guys, is that I don't think in having too many instruments to fill up a song. Minimalism is the key, and that's the vibe that this genre creates. You can just go ahead and create amazing pianos, pads, atmospheres, and little tidbits, melodics here and there, and relatively complex and but easy to groove a drum progression, and you have a future garage track. So the first step in creating such emotional future garage pianos is to select the right kind of sound. Now I usually use the stock plugins inside of Logic and some other VSTs, but I also sometimes record pianos through my digital piano. So if you are a good pianist, relatively good pianist, and have a digital piano or an upright piano, you just go ahead and record that. It will do the job. So I'm going to be disabling the processing chain for now here, and let's just go ahead and see what the chord progression is. Now you might notice a lot of future garage music are soothing, relaxing, dark, gloomy, sometimes melancholic, and something that you hear on a very dark, cloudy, rainy day. But that's because a lot of minor chord progressions are used to convey that emotion. Not necessarily all of the songs are in minor keys, but it's the emotion that you want to convey. Because such kind of electronic music don't have vocals in them, don't have lyrics in them, you have to make use of the instruments to convey that emotion through chord progressions. So in this instance, I am in the key of C major, and I'm using a 1-4-5-3 chord progression. And so just let's hear this once, and let's see. So pretty straightforward chord progression right there, and just a little bit of variation going on in the third beat, and not a lot is going on, but I will be using a lot of inversions, suspended chords, add ninth chords later on, and that is the key of any future garage music. You use inversions and suspended chords to give that dreaminess. But right off the bat, it's pretty simple sounding and not a lot of dreaminess is going on, but we'll get there soon. So that's how I kind of lay down, and essentially what I do is that I loop it a couple of times and add variations here and there, and that's what I did in the bridge section. And here is where you can see that I've kind of used inversions, suspended chords, add ninth chords to give that vibe. So let's just hear it once. So these are essentially a D flat, essentially a C sharp, an add ninth chord, a sixth chord, a minor seventh chord, and again back to a major seventh chord. So that is what gives that vibe in any future garage music. So now that you have laid down the basic chord progression and the piano motifs, let's break down the processing chain one by one. So right off the bat, I start off with an EQ, a channel EQ, and I cut down all of the frequencies till 70 hertz because we don't need them. And then I add in some subtractive EQ and some additive EQ over here, and I kind of sweep the frequency range, and I find the resonancy bits, and then I cut them quite a bit, and then I add in some air and some brightness on the higher end of the spectrum. And if you're curious to know how to use an EQ and the various ways that I use EQ, I've linked a card above. You can go and check it out. It might help you. So let's just hear it with the EQ engaged and without it. So the change is pretty subtle, but it kind of gives that warmth. Next, we have a compressor, and that's a simple compressor that I'm using, and the ratio is set to about 3:1, and the threshold is 25 dB. I've kind of taken out a couple of dBs. The makeup gain is about 1 dB because I had a loss in the gain. The knee is relatively high because I need a very subtle and a soft compression on the piano. I need it to flow, and that is the key of any future garage music. The attack is also set somewhere around 26 milliseconds, and I just need it to kind of kick in slowly. And the release is also set pretty fast because I need to kind of close that compression immediately. Nothing apart from that. I've not changed input gain, output gain. I've also not added distortion to it, and I've shut down the limiter and the auto gain. So let's just hear it with it and without it. So notice whenever the compressor kicks in, the loudest transients are squished a little and kind of even out the dynamic range. But also it kind of gives a sustained ringiness to the piano chords in the lower, the quietest parts of the piano. So hear it once again and focus on the quietest parts of the piano, how it kind of sustains. Without it. So notice in the first part, it kind of dies out immediately, but when we engage the compressor, it kind of sustains, and that is what we need with future garage music. Next up, we have a saturation, and this is from Softtube, and I use it because I kind of want that drive a little in the piano, because we don't need a lot of drive because it's gonna crash everything and it's gonna ruin everything, but it just kind of gives it that grit, if I may say so. Next up, we have a Kramer tape, and this is by Waves. And this I use only when I want an organic feel to the VST. Because we are using a VST and it's not an organic piano that is playing, I tend to add in some level of tape noise because it gives that live recording feel and as if a human is playing. So I've added in it some little bit of noise and wow flutter, and that is what it gives me, that kind of tape noise. It's pretty subtle, but you might hear it. So if you have a good quality pair of headphones, you might hear a little bit of noise that is going in the background. That's it in the processing chain, and now the dreamy parts begin. I add in some Valhalla Supermassive reverb and a delay, a little bit of delay. And this is an amazing plugin. It kind of gives that spacey, vibey, and dreamy kind of feel. So I send all of the reverbs and delays to an aux channel, and that is the key in creating such kind of ambient sound. Let's hear it. So it kind of rings till eternity, and that is what gives that ambient piano emotional chords feel. Now, something that I forgot to mention earlier was to use a different level of velocity, some random velocity in every note that you're playing. Because we are used to using VSTs, a lot of robotic feel might infuse. So make use of random velocity in every note that you're playing, and also shift quite a bit from the grid, so it kind of gives that human touch to it. So there you have it. That's how I create emotional piano chords for future garage music. And as you can see, not a lot went through creating it, just a simple chord progression. And the only difficult part, I must say, would be to finding the right key and the chord progression and the flow and the emotion that you want to convey. But rest, everything kind of weaves in together once you're in that mood and you're in that process of creation. So just go ahead and experiment as much as you can. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any motif that you have created. Link it down below and I'll be happy to hear back and give my 2 cents on it. And maybe if you have any other suggestions that I should look out on creating such emotional chords, please let me know. It's a community. We share each other's tips and tricks, and that's how we grow. And if you have any new ideas that you want me to check out, let me know in the comments down below and I'll be happy to do that. Okay dokie guys, that about wraps it up for this video. I hope you learned something from this. Just go ahead and start experimenting as much as you can. As always, if you like this video, consider subscribing, give me a thumbs up, hit the notification bell so that you can stay updated. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below and I'll be happy to get back to you. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, cheers.